Welcome back to my channel. In today's video is going to be the first in a series about how to up your odds if you're going to gamble and sign the paper to get married. Now before we start, as a disclaimer, I'd like to say I am not encouraging anyone to get married. Period. However, if you do choose to gamble, just like going into a casino, you need to have a strategy to try to up your odds. So, being a man, if you've made the decision that you want to procreate, then you may want to listen to the advice on this video. However, if you've decided you don't want kids, you can turn this video off. It's not for you. It won't have anything you'll be interested in. Now, getting that out of the way, let's move forward. Today's topic is no-fault divorce. So, just a brief history. No-fault divorce started in 1953 in Oklahoma when they did away with the requirement for a spouse to find fault in marriage in order to divorce. In 1970, California passed the first no-fault divorce law in the country, and since then, every state now has no-fault divorce. So, what are the pros of no-fault divorce? Well, according to the literature, it says states that adopted no-fault divorce laws saw a decline in the rates of domestic violence. I don't think I believe that. I think they basically are using the numbers saying that the reported amount of domestic violence went down, and that's because a woman no longer has to find fault, and accusing someone of domestic violence is pretty much the key fault a woman can find to divorce her husband. So that makes sense if you look at it like that. Similar to the point above, abused spouse may feel more empowered to leave a marriage if they do not have to publicly testify about their abuser or the acts that occurred in the relationship. Which, again, goes to the point they just don't need to lie anymore. They could just sign a paper and say, oh, I'm done with you, bye. Lessens emotional harm to children whose parents are divorcing. That is probably the one true pro of no-fault divorce. I do believe that is the case. Next up, reduces the heavy caseload of family courts. Oh, what a pro. That they could just take everything from you much faster now. That you don't even have to wait anymore. You can just come one time and take it. So, I don't know why that's listed as a pro, but I'm guessing that that's what they're using to justify the laws. Shortens the length of time it takes to obtain a divorce, which in turn shortens the amount of time spent in a stressful situation. Well, the first part's definitely true. It definitely shortens the amount of time it takes to obtain a divorce. But it doesn't lessen a stressful situation, it just extends a stressful situation. And divorce settlements are based on need, ability to pay, and contribute to family finances rather than on fault. Well, that just translates into you make money, you're paying. Now, some of the cons of no-fault divorce, according to the literature. Over 80% of no-fault divorces are unilateral, meaning one party to the divorce objects to the marriage ending, and the no-fault divorce takes that party's control away. Yep, that is usually the case. Gives more power to family court judges in deciding issues such as custody, division of marital assets, and spousal support. Where there is no one at fault, the judge's decisions are based on feelings, and feelings are not objective. Similar to this point, courts have historically favored the mother under no-fault divorce, and it's very hard nowadays to prove that the mother is an unfit parent, especially when women are all believed. So those are the listed cons. So what can we do about no-fault divorce? How can we shift this, unfair set of laws slightly in our favor if we're gambling? Well, if you live in the states of Michigan, Louisiana, Arkansas, or Arizona, you're in luck. You have one option, and that option is called a covenant marriage. A covenant marriage basically means that before you're married, you could agree to terms of your divorce. So you can choose a covenant marriage or the no-fault option. If you don't set up a covenant marriage, you're automatically defaulted to no-fault. So it behooves all the men that live in these states to set up a covenant marriage. And in that covenant marriage, you can agree to premarital counseling and limit the grounds and options should you decide to divorce. And those grounds and options could be limited to fault, it could be limited to what you want. But basically, the other real advantage you have in doing this is that when you do this, you're recognizing the consequence of commitment. And what I mean by that is, prior to signing your life away, you have the ability to look at this logically, rationally, and say, okay, if this fails and I'm having a divorce, this is what's going to happen. And more importantly, you can decide this with your partner. You can look at it and say, okay, before we have this wedding, we're going to sign this document that's going to be a covenant marriage. And then here is the list of consequences of that marriage before we sign it. So what that'll do is it's not going to prevent divorce. It's not going to stop someone from getting a divorce, but it's going to make the divorce more difficult than just sign here on the dotted line and you're good to go. And that would include counseling, that would include fault, anything you want to put in it. If your partner doesn't want to agree to that, doesn't want to recognize the consequence of commitment, maybe you shouldn't be marrying her. Because if they're already saying that, I'm not agreeing to counseling, I'm not agreeing to anything you have to say here, and I just want no fault, then I'm just going to take you for a ride. But this is a good filter for you guys to put and say, this is one little thing I'm going to do that if we are going to divorce, it's going to make it more difficult. And it's going to make it more difficult on the woman. But again, this is only a viable option in the states listed: Louisiana, Arkansas, Arizona, and Michigan. So if you live in one of those states and you're contemplating getting married, I would look into the covenant marriage option and have an agreement premarital before you sign the state contract. And that's my take on no-fault divorce. So if you found this information useful, leave a comment. If you have anything to add, leave a comment. Again, as I'm saying, I don't encourage anyone to get married, but if you're choosing to gamble, this is something you may want to consider to put the odds a little bit more into your favor. Thank you, and there'll be more videos on other topics to come.